Hi there, and welcome to My Week. I'm Christy McDonald. Nolan Finley and Nancy Kaffer are with me tonight as we take a look at some of the biggest stories out there, including the decision for a new superintendent for Detroit Public Schools Community District. Not just the controversy around the finalists, but once someone is chosen, what are the challenges for a new school leader in this district? Plus, coming up, Michigan lawmakers holding town halls around the state for their constituents, some of them very unhappy. Will Republicans be in trouble in 2018 because of Trump's policies? And are we seeing more engagement from voters than ever before? We'll debate that one coming up. And we are taking a closer look tonight at the problem of mass incarceration. Not just the cost to Michigan, but the problems of poverty and education that contribute to the numbers, and how going back to the tough on crime era of the 90s could make things even worse. It's all coming up, but let's get you started with our MiWeek contributors tonight. You know Nolan Finley from the Detroit News, and welcome back to Nancy Kaffer from the Detroit Free Press. It's good to see you, Nance.
Good to see you.
All right, you know, I think we can all agree on one thing, that we are really glad that we are not the head of United or Sean Spicer this week. I mean, talk about a rough week for everyone all the way around.
Yeah, there's so many options for how United could have handled that situation. They chose none of the good ones.
None of the good ones.
Ditto Spicer, I think.
I think so as well. Nolan, we never thought that PR and good PR would be such a hot topic of conversation.
Well, and you know, when you're a company that large with as many employees and in as many different places, I mean, if you're the CEO, you must stay up at night just wondering who's going to walk you off the dock and where. I mean, yeah. I'm sure those gate agents of United had no idea this was going to escalate to this point, and yet, boom, it did. And now, I mean, the company lost, at one point its stock was down over $1 billion.
Yeah, but is that bad policies, and then that's putting the gate people and the attendants on the front line of making some really poor decisions?
Yeah, this seems like a situation that never should have happened. And then after it happened, it is indefensible. And the response from the company should have been, we messed up and we're sorry. Yeah. Not this frantic hedging.
Oh my goodness, they should have gone to this guy's house and gave him a free first-class ticket for life. They should have done everything they could to look like, you know,
the payout's going to be interesting. Let me ask you real quick, Sean Spicer, is he going to lose his job over this one? It's one of those things that he just is going to hang on, or should he have just said, I am never going to compare or use Hitler as a comparison for anything?
I can't think of any reason why they would let him go over this. This is the same administration that put out an International Holocaust Remembrance Day statement that did not mention Jewish people as victims of the Holocaust, and then when questioned on it, doubled down saying that they wanted to emphasize that there were all kinds of victims. Like, that was a pretty huge gap. In this same vein of sort of anti-Semitism, offensiveness to Jewish people, and that wasn't a deal breaker. Like, in any normal administration, this would be.
So this is not a deal. You don't think this is going to be a deal breaker for them? Should he be canned, Nolan?
Not for this. I mean, he misspoke and he apologized. I mean, I don't think we're in this. He
tried to. He did it. I'm sorry, but this is what I was. He kept trying to explain it away. I think, which is a wrong move.
I think he should be canned. I think he won't be canned.
I don't think either. I think if he's going to be canned, it's going to be for the overall problems he's had, not for a slip of the tongue.
Well, I can't wait to see what more overall problems we might see. All right, let's turn now to a couple of topics at hand. Talk about the superintendent's job at Detroit Public Schools. And we have talked a lot about the fact that Alicia Merriweather, the interim superintendent, has not been included as the finalist. And we even saw a couple days ago business leader Dan Gilbert come out and say, hey, how come she's not included? So we have him, you have the NAACP, you have the teachers unions, nonprofits, you have this growing number of people. Nolan, let me ask you, do you think that there's any chance that that could change?
I don't think so. It looks like they're going ahead this week with some final hearings and community, giving the community a chance to weigh in. But I mean, that is probably the most unusual coalition of supporters for an individual I've ever seen in this town. And it should signal something to this board, but you know, this is not, you know, we still haven't seen what this board's going to be. On paper, it doesn't look like it's the greatest board in the world. And I think, you know, they're going to go ahead with a decision this week. And my bet is they'll make the wrong one.
You really think? Do you think they're going to make the wrong decision this week, Nancy?
I don't want to prejudge their decision. I do think it is unusual that they didn't consider Alicia Merriweather. I think, as Nolan said, that's a lot of people saying that she's worth at least a look. You know, I'm not sitting in their seat. Yeah, there's a trade-off. You have a person here who seems generally respected throughout the community. Is a pretty impressive person in a lot of ways, but she came in being appointed by the emergency manager who was appointed by the state. That's such an unpopular thing, particularly with a newly elected board. I kind of felt coming in that was going to be a lot of baggage for her to try to throw off. One of the biggest arguments in favor of looking at her is how much turnover there's been in that job in the last, when was the last time there was a permanent superintendent? I think 10 maybe? Mm-hmm. There needs to be stability in this district, but then we also, have to, I guess, give the board room to make its own decisions there.
Give them a little independence there. Well, let me ask you this. So regardless of what decision that they make and who they end up putting in that position, what does a new superintendent have to achieve, I guess, in the first 3 months, or have to assert themselves in this role, Nolan?
Well, right away, I think they've got to staff up the schools. There's still classrooms that don't have permanent teachers. There are classes where they can't even get substitute teachers for. They've got to staff up the district. You're not going to go anywhere academically if you have classes that are under substitutes or under no teacher at all, or where you have to combine classes because of the teacher shortage. You've got to deal with that right away, and that's a big job. I think the second challenge is to keep the budget on track. They're debt-free now. Because of the bailout. They want to stay debt-free. That gives them the flexibility to spend money on classrooms that they didn't have before. So he's got to very carefully, he or she has to very carefully manage this budget to keep that district out of debt. You don't want to get there again.
Okay, so teacher shortage, debt. Nancy, what about, and we talked a little bit about this in terms of Alicia Merriweather, what about reaching out to the community, that business community, the nonprofits, some of the organizations in Detroit that can be helpful to the school district?
Well, that coalition of groups that is backing Merriweather is an important group of people for the new superintendent to connect with. But the most important people, I agree with everything Nolan said. Staff up, make sure the schools can do their basic job. The most important group for the new superintendent to connect with is Detroit parents, who have been just at the whims of every reform that came down the pike. Emergency managers, a whole series of them, school closures that don't necessarily make rhyme or reason when you look at where people need to go to school, where investments have been made in new buildings. A new superintendent has to convince parents in Detroit that there is a reason for them to send their kids to DPS, not to leave the district, and that they can feel good about it. You send your child, this is the most valuable thing you have, to a school on the premise that they're going to help you, not hurt you. And that's the first message that superintendent has to convey.
Agree. I agree with you. And especially important seeing as people are going to be making decisions about where they want to send their children in the next couple of months. And that person has to come out and say, we want your children here in September to start classes.
And here's why you should do it.
And here's why you should do it. All right, let me shift gears really quickly. We've been watching a lot of these town hall meetings that the Michigan congressional delegation has had. Mike Bishop just had one this past week that wasn't as raucous, I think, as Dave Trott faced a couple of weeks ago when he had one. Justin Amash had one also on the other side of the state. Let me ask you this. Are we seeing more engagement from people, Nolan, coming out that could make a difference in what our Congress looks like in another year and a half?
I think it's way too early to say. We're just 3 months into this new Congress, and that's almost 2 years away. Got to see how things play out in Washington. Got to determine how much of these town hall meetings, how many of the people who are attending are the folks who voted for these Congress people and are now disappointed in them. I don't know the answer to that. I suspect there's a whole lot of, I know there's been a whole lot of organizing to fill these things. Groups like Indivisible and others have pushed these protests at these congressional meetings. How much of it is grassroots? How much of it is independents? Could end up like the Tea Party movement, which became a force in the 2010 election and thereafter. But I think at this point it's too early to say what's going to happen in 18.
What do you think, Nancy? Do you think that there's disappointment from voters, or is it something that people are going to back off on? It feels to me that you're seeing more engagement from people who are trying to understand what's happening and then taking it back to their lawmakers and saying, look, I'm going to either question you on it or hold you accountable.
You are seeing that. That is absolutely happening. People are getting way more engaged. The question is whether or not it sustains through 2018 or 2020 is the big question. One of the things those indivisible groups have pushed very strongly, and these are all self-organized. This is put out by a group of former congressional staffers, wrote this guidebook where they sort of analyzed the Tea Party's tactics, packaged it up into a really digestible guidebook, and published it online. folks all over the country have been picking this up and organizing. I mean, there's no massive organization here that's organizing all this. People have taken this book on the local level and figured out how to use it.
So
One of the things they have pushed is, if you don't live in this district, don't get involved here. Go get involved in your own district, even if it's an all-dim district. Work on holding your people accountable, because they don't care what you think if you don't vote in their district. So there is a connection. I mean, of course, we don't know how that's working in real life, if it is people who organically are connected to that congressperson. But sustaining that effort over the next year and a half, that's a lot.
It's going to be interesting to see.
Congressional incumbency is a very powerful thing. So, you know.
All right.